I was single in my 20s and decided it was time I got back into the dating scene. My apartment needed work though. In particular, I wanted to get new furniture including a couch. Therefore, I scoured sites like Craigslist for deals, and eventually I found one, or at least what appeared to be a good deal. The ad was straightforward: gently used sectional couch, gray fabric, great condition, $50 OBO, pickup only. The photos showed it in a dimly lit living room, but it looked clean enough, no rips or stains that I could see. The seller's name was listed as Mark, and his location was just a 20-minute drive from my place in the suburbs. I messaged him, and he responded almost immediately. Come by any time today, cash only. No haggling, no questions. I figured he just wanted it gone. When I pulled up to the address, it was a modest ranch-style house with overgrown grass and faded siding. Mark answered the door, a guy in his late 40s, balding, with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're here for the couch? Follow me." He led me to the basement, where the sectional couch sat against a concrete wall. It smelled faintly musty, like old laundry, but for $50 I wasn't complaining. We loaded it into my truck without much talk. He just kept glancing at his watch. As I drove off, I caught him in the rearview mirror, standing in the driveway, watching me go. Back in my apartment, I managed to wrestle the thing inside and positioned it in the living room. It fit perfectly, and after a quick vacuum, it looked brand new. Feeling a sense of motivation, I decided to spruce up the rest of the place, new lamps and a coffee table, and hop back on the dating apps. Within a week, I had my first date lined up, Sarah, a graphic designer from downtown. We hit it off over drinks, and she suggested coming back to my place for a movie. We settled on the couch, popcorn in hand, streaming some rom-com. About halfway through though, Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "Is this thing vibrating?" she asked, half laughing, but she also looked nervous. I paused the movie and asked her what she meant. Sarah pressed her hand against the cushion. "Feel that? It's like a low hum." I did, and sure enough, there was a faint vibration, almost like a phone on silent. But it stopped as soon as I touched it. We shrugged it off, maybe the building's AC unit or something, and finished the night without issue. Sarah left with a kiss, promising to text. The next few dates went similarly. A girl named Emily came over, and midway through chatting, she jumped up. "Did you hear that? It's like a click." I hadn't, but now I was paying attention. After she left later that night, I sat on the couch scrolling my phone, and there it was again, a soft whirring from deep inside the cushions. I poked around, but found nothing. The following evening, I had another date, Lisa, and we were getting cozy when she pulled back. "Your couch is warm, like unnaturally warm in one spot." She was right, the left section felt heated, as if something electronic was running inside. By now, I was weirded out enough to investigate. I flipped the couch over, examining the underside. The fabric was stapled tight, but one corner looked loose. I pried it open with a screwdriver, revealing a small zippered compartment meant for storage. Inside was a black box, about the size of a paperback book, wired with what looked like a battery pack and a tiny circuit board. Attached was a micro camera lens, angled to point outward through a pinhole in the upholstery. My stomach dropped. This wasn't some factory defect, it was a hidden surveillance device. Panicking, I yanked it out and smashed it with a hammer. Who the hell puts a camera in a couch? I grabbed my phone to call the cops, but before I could dial, it rang, an unknown number. I answered, and a familiar voice came through. "You found it. Took you long enough." It was Mark. "What the hell do you want?" I yelled. He chuckled softly. "That couch was my window, my ex-wife's favorite spot. After she left me, I needed to keep an eye on things. You understand, lonely guy like you back in the dating game. I just wanted to watch and see how it goes." I didn't care. I had enough of that conversation. I hung up, blocked the number, and reported it to the police. They said they'd look into it, but without proof of a crime, there wasn't much they could do. I dragged the couch to the curb that night, posting a free sign on it. The next morning, it was gone. I thought that was the end of it. I changed my locks even, and got a security camera of my own. A few weeks later, I matched with a new girl on the app. We met up, and everything clicked. Back at my place, now with a cheap futon, she excused herself to the bathroom. While she was gone, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of us, taken from inside my apartment. It was angled low, like from furniture level. The message read, "Nice futon, but I preferred the couch." I spun around, heart pounding, but the room was empty. Then I noticed the faint outline on the carpet where the sectional had been. Mark hadn't taken the couch from the curb. He'd been watching all along, and now he had a new way in. The police found him eventually, hiding in a van down the street with a laptop full of footage. Turns out, he'd rigged dozens of items he sold online, lamps, tables, and couches, all with hidden cameras. He confessed it started with his ex, but escalated to strangers for the thrill. They arrested him, but not before he sent one last message from custody. "You think you're single? I've been with you every night." I moved out the next day. Now I buy everything new, from stores. But sometimes, late at night, on whatever couch I'm on, I swear I feel that hum again. And I tell myself, it has to be just my imagination. Growing up, my family had this fancy but old leather couch that sat in our living room. I remember climbing and jumping on it with my brothers when we were little, and I'm sure we beat it up a lot. I think our parents decided to just let it go, probably planning to replace it eventually. However, the couch kept holding up year after year, and they never ended up getting rid of it. It was one of those pieces that blended into the background of our lives, dark brown leather cracked in places from age, with deep cushions that swallowed you whole. My mom would drape a throw blanket over it to hide the wear, but it was always there, anchoring family movie nights, holiday gatherings, and those quiet evenings when Dad read the paper. As we got older, my brothers and I outgrew the jumping phase, but the couch stayed, a silent witness to our family's milestones. When I turned 25 and bought my first house, a fixer-upper in a quiet neighborhood, my parents insisted I take it. "It's still got life in it," Dad said, helping me load it into the U-Haul. "It's better than buying some cheap IKEA crap." I didn't argue, because money was tight, and it also matched the vintage vibe I was going for. I set it up in my living room, vacuumed out the crumbs from years past, and even conditioned the leather to make it shine a bit. For the first few weeks, it was fine, comfortable even. I'd crash on it after work and binge-watch shows until I dozed off. But then the dreams started. Vivid ones, where I'd be sitting on the couch as a kid, but the room would warp, shadows stretching unnaturally, whispers echoing from the cushions like muffled conversations. No matter how hard I'd try, I could never quite make them out. I'd always wake up sweating, my back aching as if I'd been twisting in an odd position all night. I chalked it up to stress from the new job and house, and maybe the unfamiliar creaks of an old building settling in. One evening, after a long day, I flopped down and felt something shift under me. It wasn't the springs, but a subtle give, like the padding was rearranging itself. I ignored it at first and continued scrolling through my phone, but then I noticed a faint imprint on the armrest, 5 shallow grooves, like fingernail marks. I was like 99% sure they hadn't been there before. I ran my hand over them and they seemed fresh, the leather slightly raised around the edges. I thought it was weird, but convinced myself I'd done it in my sleep. I tried to buff them out, but they only seemed to deepen over the next few days. The itching came next. Whenever I sat for more than a few minutes, my skin would prickle, starting at my thighs and spreading up my back. It wasn't an allergy, as I'd never had issues with leather before. I decided to strip the cushions, thinking maybe dust mites or something gross had built up inside. Pulling off the covers, I found the zipper underneath and opened it up. The stuffing looked normal at first, foam and batting yellowed with age. But as I dug deeper, my fingers brushed something hard and irregular. I pulled it out, a small, discolored bone fragment about the size of a finger joint. My heart skipped. Maybe it was from a pet, I told myself. Maybe our old dog had chewed a toy and stuffed it in there years ago. But then I found another, and another, tiny shards, some with bits of dried sinew clinging to them. And hair, long strands of human hair tangled in the fibers. I gagged, dropping everything. That night I slept in the guest room, the couch glaring at me from the living room like it knew I disturbed its secret. I couldn't let it go. The next day I called my parents. "Where did that couch really come from?" I asked Mom. She hesitated, then laughed it off. "Oh honey, it was your great-grandpa's. He had it custom made back in the 50s. Why do you ask?" Then Dad got on the line, his voice a lot sharper. "Don't go tearing it apart, son. It's an antique." But their tone was off. It was weirdly very defensive. I started researching online, digging into family history. Great-grandpa Elias was a tanner by trade and owned a small leather workshop during the post-war boom. There were even old newspaper clippings about missing persons in our town back then, hitchhikers and drifters who vanished without a trace. Nothing was directly linked to him, but whispers in local forums about how his business thrived despite shortages and how he always had the softest hides. The pieces clicked in the worst way imaginable. I confronted my dad in person that weekend. What did he do? What the hell is in that couch? Dad's face went pale and he sat me down, on the kitchen table, not the couch. Elias, he had a dark side. Times were hard after the war. He experimented with materials. He said it made the leather last forever. Your grandma found out after he died, but by then it was part of the family. We couldn't just throw it away, because that could open up too many questions. My dad wouldn't say more, but his eyes darted to the living room, where the couch waited. I didn't care. I dragged it to the backyard that night, doused it in gasoline, lit it up. The flames roared, but the leather didn't crackle like it should. It bubbled, almost like it was breathing. As it burned, I swear I heard faint screams echoing from deep within. The fire department came and ruled it an accident, but the frame didn't fully ash. Chunks of it survived, charred but intact. I thought that was the end of it. Why wouldn't it be? I moved on and bought a new couch from a big box store, but a month later, sorting through mail, I found an envelope from an anonymous sender. It had a photo of my great-grandpa's workshop, with a note scribbled on the back. The Hydes remember, they always find their way home. That night, on my brand new couch, I felt that familiar prickle start again. I checked the tag, made from premium imported leather, and there, in the seam, a single strand of long, tangled hair poked out. Now I don't sit anymore. I stand and I pace, but I know it's out there. Pieces of it, scattered in products everywhere, waiting to reassemble, waiting for me. I live in a somewhat rural residential area, or at least some of the streets and houses in my neighborhood border this huge forest preserve. It's a somewhat hilly area, and there are miles of trails and some truly breathtaking views. I usually hike there on the weekends to clear my head, and just enjoy nature, and very rarely do I see other people. Judging from Google Maps, this forest is pretty massive, and the trails go on for much longer than I've ever walked down them. One Saturday, feeling adventurous, I decided to push farther than my usual loop. The path narrowed, overgrown with ferns and low-hanging branches, and the air grew thicker, laced with the scent of damp earth and pine. About 3 miles in, where the trail forked into what looked like an old logging road, I spotted something unnatural, a couch. It was wedged in a small clearing just off the path, half shaded by a cluster of oaks. This wasn't some ratty discard. This was a modern loveseed, beige microfiber, no visible damage or weathering. How it got there, I had no clue. There were no tire tracks and no signs of dragging. Maybe some kids hauled it out there for a prank, or someone dumped it illegally. Either way, it was too good to leave rotting in the woods. I tested it. Its frame was solid, and the cushions were clean. My own couch at home was a sagging hand-me-down from college, so I figured why not. It took over an hour to maneuver back, branches snagging my clothes, sweat soaking through my shirt. By the time I got it to my backyard, I was exhausted but satisfied. I hosed it down, let it dry in the sun, and carried it inside to replace the old one, which I curbside dumped that evening. The first night was uneventful. I sank into it watching TV, appreciating the firmness. But around midnight, as I dozed off, a faint rustling pulled me awake, like something shifting inside the fabric. I dismissed it as the house settling or wind from the open window. The next morning, though, I noticed faint black spots on the underside of the cushions, like mold speckles. I scrubbed them with bleach, but they smeared, leaving a sticky residue that smelled faintly metallic. That afternoon, back from errands, the spots were back, darker, and spreading like veins across the fabric. Annoyed, I flipped the couch and inspected closer. Peeling back a loose seam, I found the source, a thin layer of dark fuzz coating the inner foam, pulsing almost imperceptibly under my flashlight beam. This wasn't your average mildew. It was alive, tendrils weaving through the padding. I vacuumed it out as best I could, but some clung stubbornly. By evening, my eyes itched, my throat scratchy. The hallucinations started subtly that night. Sitting on the couch, scrolling my phone, the room's corners seemed to blur, shadows lengthening like fingers reaching out. I blinked it away, blaming fatigue, but in bed later, I woke paralyzed, staring at the ceiling where patterns swirled into faces. They were hollow-eyed, whispering incoherently. The next day, it escalated. On the trail for my usual hike, the trees closed in tighter than before, branches scraping like claws. I heard footsteps behind me, but every time I looked, I saw nothing. Back home, I collapsed onto the couch, and the whispers returned, clearer now. They were fragmented words like lost, cold, help. Panicking, I searched online for forest mold hallucinations. Turns out, there's a rare fungus in old-growth woods like mine. Stachybotrys atra variant, or something similar, thriving in damp, undisturbed areas. It releases spores that cause sick building syndrome on steroids, respiratory issues, vivid delusions, even psychosis if exposure builds. Hikers have reported it in abandoned structures, but a couch? Maybe it had been left out longer than I thought, absorbing the spores deep into its core. I decided to drag the thing back outside, intending to burn it, but as I struck the match, the mold bloomed violently, puffing clouds of black dust that I inhaled before I could back away. Coughing, I staggered inside, locking the door. That was 2 days ago. Now, the spots are on my walls, creeping from the vents where the spores must have spread. The whispers are constant, urging me deeper into the woods. Last night, in the mirror, my reflection grinned back with blackened teeth. I called the doctor, but they think it's stress. The forest calls me now, miles of trails waiting. I know that if I go, I won't come back. But sitting here, feeling the itch under my skin, maybe that's the point. The preserve claims what it touches, and it's already inside me. I was never too sociable and didn't keep up with my friends from high school, so after graduating college and moving to a new area, I didn't really hang out with anyone. I got a good job and even took out a mortgage and bought a starter home, so life was alright overall. I was lonely though. Despite telling myself I'd get started with dating apps several times, I was never able to follow through. As a consequence, I had a lot of time to myself, and on the weekends I'd visit places like parks or other attractions in my part of the state. There was a mall about 20 minutes away, and even though I wasn't an old person, I enjoyed walking around and randomly wandering into some of the stores. One of the anchors had closed down, I think it was a Sears, and the place had been vacant ever since I first explored the mall. However, one day a new furniture store opened in its place, and they had this big promotion about a couch convention. Intrigued, I walked in, because there really wasn't a reason not to. The place was buzzing, rows of couches everywhere, from sleek modern sectionals to plush recliners, with salespeople demoing features like built-in massagers and hidden compartments. Balloons floated overhead, and there was even a raffle for a free custom couch. I wandered aimlessly at first, sinking into a few to test them out, imagining how one might spruce up my empty living room. That's when I noticed her, a girl about my age, dressed in all black with pale skin and dark lipstick, and silver piercings that caught the fluorescent lights. She was perched on a Gothic-style velvet couch, the kind with ornate carved legs that looked like it belonged in a vampire's lair. Our eyes met as I passed by, and she smiled, shy, but with a hint of mischief. "Creepy, right?" she said, patting the cushion next to her. "This one's called the Midnight Throne. Feels like it could swallow you whole." I laughed nervously and sat down, introducing myself as Alex. Her name was Raven, fitting for her vibe, and she worked at a nearby tattoo parlor. We started chatting about the absurdity of a couch convention, and how it was basically a glorified sales pitch. But the free popcorn really made it worthwhile. Raven confessed she was there killing time before her shift, drawn in by the weird energy of the place. There was something off about the store, she said, the way the lights flickered in the back corners, or how some couches seemed to creak on their own, like they were breathing. As we talked, the conversation flowed easily. She shared stories of her goth phase starting in high school, collecting oddities like antique Ouija boards, and I opened up about my loneliness and how the small wandering was my sad attempt at a social life. We bonded over horror movies, debating the scariest couch scenes, like that one in The Conjuring where furniture moves by itself. Before I knew it, an hour had passed and she had to head to work. "Hey, if you're not too scared," she joked, "meet me here next weekend. They're doing a haunted furniture demo." I agreed, my heart racing for the first time in years. The following days dragged, but I couldn't shake a subtle unease. At home, I'd catch myself glancing at my old couch, wondering if it was watching me, like Raven's words had planted a seed of paranoia. I even had a nightmare where I was trapped inside a couch, fabric closing in like a coffin, her voice calling from outside. Shaking it off as excitement, I showed up early the next Saturday. Raven was there, waving me over to a display of cursed replicas, couches inspired by urban legends. We laughed about it, but as we sat on one, a chill ran through me. The cushion felt unnaturally cold, and I swore I heard a whisper, like fabric tearing softly. Our dates escalated from there. Coffee turned into late-night walks into abandoned lots, where she'd share creepy folklore about possessed objects. One evening, at her place, we lounged on her black leather couch, watching Poltergeist, and she leaned in for our first kiss. It was electric, but midway through, her cat knocked over a lamp, plunging us into darkness. We fumbled laughing, but in that moment I felt a prickle, like eyes on us from the shadows. Raven dismissed it as her haunted apartment vibes, but it lingered. Months blurred into a whirlwind romance. We moved in together, furnishing our place with pieces from that same store, including a matching goth couch she adored. There were odd moments, items shifting slightly overnight, faint scratches appearing on the arms like claw marks. I'd wake to her murmuring in her sleep, words like "join us" that she'd laugh off as a dream nonsense. My friends, the few I reconnected with, teased me about dating a witch, but I was smitten so I didn't care. She proposed on Halloween, under a full moon, with a ring engraved with ravens. We got married in a small ceremony at a Gothic chapel, surrounded by black roses and candlelight. Years later, we're still blissfully happy, parents to a little girl who jumps on that same couch like it's a trampoline. The eerie moments? They turned out to be nothing, overactive imaginations fueled by too many scary stories. Raven's goth girl persona softened into a loving wife, and our home is filled with warmth, not whispers. Life's twists can start in the strangest places, like a couch convention, but sometimes they lead to forever. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way.